Gentlelady's time has expired. With that, the Vice Chairman of the committee, Mr. Rose from Tennessee, is acknowledged for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being with us today. Mr. Paley, how has the placing of U.S. Special Envoy to Iran, Robert Malley, on unpaid leave affected your office's ability to effectively function?
Thanks very much for the question. So as the Deputy Special Envoy for Iran at the State Department, I'm in charge of the day-to-day implementation of our Iran policy at the department, and nothing has changed in terms of our implementation of that policy. We work across the department and across the interagency to continue to advance President Biden and Secretary Blinken's focus on countering Iran, which remains a top adversary and state sponsor of terrorism.
Can you provide any clarity as to why Mr. Malley's security clearance was suspended?
Unfortunately, I'm not in a position today to speak to personnel or security clearance issues.
Is that something that perhaps you all could answer in a classified setting?
I know that the department is engaged with this committee and other committees on certain issues related to this case, but today, again, I'm not in a position to speak to security clearance
issues. If it's possible to get more clarity on that in that setting, we'd certainly appreciate it. I would.
We will certainly take the question back. Thank you.
All right. In September, the Department of Treasury established what it called a humanitarian channel in Qatar. I think we're all familiar with that action to administer $6 billion in Iranian assets from South Korea. It is described as a way to, quote, further facilitate the flow of humanitarian assistance to the people of Iran. Assistant Secretary Rosenberg, why did Treasury decide to create a quote, humanitarian, unquote, channel, and is this a common mechanism for Treasury?
Thank you for the question. As to the why, I'd be very happy to defer to my State Department colleague, given that the creation of this particular mechanism was pursuant to a deal on the exchange of detainees between Iran and the United States. I will defer on that. With regard to, is this common practice? Is there precedent for this? In the last administration, there was an effort to establish there was an establishment of a Swiss humanitarian channel to pursue the same goal, which is to say to take Iranian funds, highly restricted, and that could be used only for humanitarian purposes, subject to intense vetting, akin to what I had just described in the prior questioning. So there is precedent for this. This is another example that builds on lessons learned and is in a different jurisdiction.
So practically, and I'll let Mr. Paley, I'll let you clarify as well, but is there a stark difference between a humanitarian channel and other escrow accounts that are available to Iran for humanitarian trade purposes? And either one of you.
I can answer that. So it is the case that there's special conditions around a humanitarian channel understood as such, which is to say the establishment of such a channel is designed and established exclusively for humanitarian payments. And as I was noting before, it can be the case that certain potential recipients of the funds are pre-vetted. They can only be customers of an institution. It's designed for that purpose. Generally speaking, the U.S. law, policy, and sanctions allow for payments, Iran, as well as for other countries subject to intensive sanctions and other programs, to be able to pay for humanitarian transactions. But this is a particularized channel established with conditionality around it, even though it could be permitted to pay for humanitarian goods in a different account, but subject to that would not be an account established exclusively for humanitarian purposes.
And give us some greater sense of what data Treasury is relying on to ensure that the humanitarian channels are the most effective way to get the appropriate assistance to Iranian citizens. How are you measuring that? What's the data source that you use to measure that effectively?
That's an interesting question. I would offer that our highest purpose here is to, and the purpose that guides our policy overall is to ensure that Iran does not have access to money it can use for terror and destabilization. And so,
Our time has expired, but I would appreciate it if you might expand on that for the record. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.